V Rising is a perfect millennial power fantasy. It lets you get a big house and stay out of the sun just like God intended. Okay, so I mostly want to focus on characters and worlds in my stuff going forward. But I done got myself addicted to another one of these digital drugs again. So, before I start probing into what makes this game special, let's talk about the characters. There aren't any. Moving on. The world has some stuff worth talking about, but not much. Based on the intro cutscene, the land of Vardaran was once ruled by vampires. Until the dirt-farming human proletariat rose up and used the power of organized religion and/or holy magic to drive the night creatures into tombs. There's talk of choking on dust, and the example vampire does indeed look pretty dutsy. That's about it. This isn't a narrative-driven game, it's taking that old-school low-effort RPG route of letting you build your own story. This is almost always shorthand for, we didn't want to write a story, your character is a mute, piss off and get to grinding. We're left to imagine headcanon for our create a character. So I choose to believe that my chick here was once an entitled trophy housewife to a big strong vampire lord. Hence the purple Karen haircut and why she's bad at everything beyond locating managers. I still kinda suck at this game, much like my girl here sucks on random dudes, bosses, rats. She's similar to me in that way. She'll suck on anything, really. You got woods, more woods, farmlands, woods, some hills with a city, still more woods, and some spooky mountains with big scary things. Very much a woods-heavy environment, a design choice that probably has a lot to do with the fact that moving through the world during the day requires you sticking to the shadows of tree boys. Said tree boys are quite dense, as are the shadows they cast, which probably reminds my Valady of her long-lost Valord, whose shadow she also enjoyed staying in. Ideally, she'd stay in his big strong arms. They made her feel safe and loved, and she would just drain his undead balls of whatever it is that vampires come. Probably dusty scabs. But he was a very considerate lover to her. He'd make her orgasm first every time. And so hard that she'd levitate, just breaking his cold, hard hog off in her snapper until her legs quivered. What was I talking about? I like how the game handles sunlight. You get a pretty gracious grace period before your bush hair, your taint hair, and everything in between catches fire. And stepping into a comfy shadow more or less resets that grace period. Helpfully, nighttime lasts twice as long as daytime on this planet. Pretty sweet little detail in the lore, if you can call it that, which kinda helps explain the joint being lousy with vampires. Aside from the more obvious gameplay factor that the sun fucking burns us and they wanted to cut down the amount of time it hassles you. Early on in a server, you're gonna be nervously chasing shadows in your base as you try to craft shit, which can get pretty heckin' annoying. You can alleviate this problem by not cutting down the trees in or around your domain's borders, as they provide shade that's a bit more reliable than a basic bitch palisade wall. Notice I mentioned servers. This game's a lot like Minecraft, Conan Exiles, or Rust in that you start completely from scratch on any server you join. So it might be wise to dump your first few hours into a private game or join a trustworthy friend to learn the ropes before you start looking for trouble on servers with random dildos. Game has several mode choices, from baby's first private PvE game with full admin controls of things like loot rates and day-night cycle lengths, to public PvE or PvP, all the way up to the big dick full loot PvP mode where players can take your shit when they inevitably murk you. But that shit's too scary for me at time of writing. While leaving your first server or private game will probably feel devastating as you start a new life from zero in another world, you will have learned a lot about your early game priorities and can likely outpace your previous run in a couple of hours. Especially if you join a clan with your chooms. Focus on your journal quest line. Gear up, kill V-Blood bosses to suck out their abilities, make a small cluster of crafting shits in the trees to hold you until you can afford a roof and start ranging out further from home. This bitch is gonna be hella addictive on a PvP server. The controls and combat feel great. Sorta blizzardy like Diablo with some of that League of Legends stank on it for those of you who enjoy huffing that shit. All abilities require mouse aiming. No targeting for you. and you can equip 4 spells at a time, plus up to 3 attacks based on your weapon's quality. The spells can lead to some pretty diverse builds deeper into the game. Can focus on buffs and counters or ranged attacks. Maybe a mix. Shit like that. I imagine it'll scratch the same itch I still have for World of Warcraft PvP, despite being about a year sober from that skag. So I'll have to put on my big boy pants and check out a full loot server soon. The extra edge of raiding other players' castles and taking all their shit or having the same done to mine. It sounds pretty fucking thrilling. Anyhow, some rapid fire tips for noobs. Shit I wish I'd known before I started. Again, leave some trees in and around the spot you pick for your castle heart. You can always cut them down later, but much like your sacred virginity, you can't get trees back after they're gone. Wooden coffins aren't as useless as they might initially appear. They don't accelerate the passage of time, but they keep your logged out body safe on a PvP server. Or they allow you to hide from the sun if you just want to wait out that horrid burning light for the 6 or so painfully long minutes it oppresses you from on high. Later on, you'll be able to make a stone coffin to use as a respawn point, and by then you'll have one of those roofs I remember living under in my childhood. Roofs automatically generate above a closed area of stone castle walls, and a roof allows you to construct a proper gamer dungeon, safe from the tyranny of the sun. So be sure to bash many rocks, because you'll need to process a lot of stone into bricks to construct floors and walls. You can pretty easily take out the first 4 or so bosses with default equipment from the early journal quests in the line. Fuck that ice archer bitch though, goddamn. But you'll want to keep your gear level pretty close to the level of the rest of the bosses or you're gonna have a bad time. Don't go after enemies way beyond your level. Very complex stuff here. Careful who you suck, because you might catch something you don't want. The buffs you get from your blood gauge is based on the last guy you sucked to completion, which is represented by a percentage attached to their class, though later you can get an ability from a vampire hunter that lets you see everyone's blood quality. You probably don't want to drop your 69% brute vintage for a 4% worker swill. Each class of dude blood has a situational purpose. Worker lets you farm grind more faster. Brute lets you steal health from gonks via bonks. Warrior makes your bonks more better, etc. Spears and crossbows are usually the best weapons for killing shit, though if you have a higher quality hammy, sword, or axes, use those over a spear. Also, the non-spears have a wider swing arc, so they're more handy for when you've gotten yourself into a gangbang. There's a compelling sense of progression to the gameplay loop of this thing as you move north and gain access to new shit by taking down bosses. You're finding horses, discover iron near the center of the map. Right about there. Big ol' haunted mine. Ooh, so spooky. And the human settlements become more dense. You're dealing with, see pillaging and enslaving, villagers and town guards rather than hobo bandits. You're converting dudes into servants who go farm shit for you and imprisoning people with high quality blood so you can suck them off anytime to get particular buffs. Love the blood quality mechanic, don't love the eugenics implication. You can really start preparing for different activities instead of just running around stumbling on shit, or just hoping for the best with your noob loadout. Toss in some PvP with the land control angle of clans and you've got a big juicy booty of a game to spank and squeeze at with your filthy dirt grubbing paws. Might be difficult finding a server where all the best real estate isn't locked down and aggressively protected by other clans. This can create compounding problems because your castle's location is probably the most important decision you can make. So try not to stick it too far south or close to the map boundaries, or you're gonna slowly come to the realization that you've made a horrible mistake, as your vampire's ass begins to fuse with their saddle. Early access, though, might get better with time. Somehow. In terms of aesthetics, game has a pleasing art style going, though the dude guy characters are weirdly proportioned with odd feet and torsos. They remind me of Captain Quark, whereas the lady guys are standard issue hot-shaped waifus. The wolves evoke a particularly derpy model from WoW, but I dig 'em. The bears are hefty and the rats are chomp. Animations are nice and weighty, aiming feels accurate. You can choose to suck on dudes near death and bite for an instant kill, or finish them off a little slower by chugging their sauce in the middle of a brawl to refill gauge. Risky though that may be. Based on how fast they can drain a dude of his juice though, these vampires could suck a cock through a straw. Goddamn. I'm no pro Verizon'er yet, but I smell what this game is shitting. and I likes what I smells. Wish it had more of a story for me to proctologize, but it's early access and the devs might just dump some more narrative content on our chests in the coming months. Here's to hoping. My chest is ready. Any fuck, press the YouTube buttons for more lore, vibe analysis, and cum jokes. Suck my fuck.